Now, very often women in particular struggle with putting themselves or maybe putting themselves is not the right word, but finding themselves, let's say, in the position where, oh yeah, I feel like I'm mentoring my husband. What do I mean by this? Well, I want my husband to do more. I wish he could succeed more. You know, I try to push him, and that very often causes a tremendous amount of tension. I see in some of my students and my listeners. What can we advise women? What really is the better approach, or is there a better approach? How can we handle that, you know, that dynamic within a marriage where a woman wants the husband to succeed, if he's the breadwinner, let's say, if it's a more traditional role, without her becoming this pressure on the husband, feeling that it's crushing his ego?
Yeah, and just to make the case a little more complicated, the woman will say, you know what, my husband's sometimes lazy. He needs me to push him. You know.
Yes, we hear that too.
Yeah. It's hard to answer, to be honest, in a generic, you know, blanket statement that one size fits all, because it's case by case. You know, sometimes it's good to prod someone on, but I think this is a few vital key points. Whether it's a wife or a husband, your job is not to make your spouse miserable. That's not your job. Your job is not to make them uncomfortable.
Really? Jewish wives think that's their job. No, I'm kidding.
Well, the joke goes like this: the man wears the pants in the family, and his wife tells him what pants to wear. I mean that, right? Like that? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think the following. The key thing is, it's like in any motivation. When you want to motivate someone, if you start becoming a pain and a nag, they're going to avoid you, and they'll just become more tension. If your intentions are really to help inspire, so inspire your husband. Say something positive. If you start saying you're not working enough, we need more money, we're in debt, we're this, that usually is demoralizing and is not motivating. And I think a good, smart woman has to understand and ask, am I really motivating that person? It's just like with your children. If you can do that to your children too. You can make them you can demoralize them and make them feel very depressed. You're not doing well enough in school. You're not trying enough. That's not the tone. The tone has to be with love, with kindness. Then the person knows you care about them. Nobody wants to hear critique. Nobody wants to come home when they want to relax and be calm and just hear their wife berating them. Or for that matter, the husband berating the wife. You know, I see it the other way around as well. Husbands say, we need more money. I need you to go work, even if he's the main breadwinner. So I really want to be equal here. You know, I don't want to be sexist. It goes both directions. The key word is in Hasidus is a word called bittul. A relationship between a husband and wife should not be driven, this is my main point, by money. It should be driven by love. I see people who are struggling financially, but they love each other deeply, and they will never hurt each other. I see people who are very wealthy and have everything they need, and they're constantly bickering and fighting. The thing of a wife and a husband, they have to know we're here as partners to create a home for God. Am I doing that? If every time you're at a meal, there's a fight about money or you're not doing enough, you're not bringing God into your life.
Right.
So a woman who's a truly God-fearing person has to say, you know what, just like we discussed earlier, you make the effort you can, but at the end of the day, Hashem will bless. I just recently had a situation where a woman had one child, and then the doctor said she can't have another child. And her husband was very upset, very upset. And the woman felt extremely terrible because she's like disappointing her husband. So I sat with him. I said, God decides how many children you'll have, not you. Your wife is a beautiful person. It's not like it's her fault.
Right.
It's not appropriate for you to be putting such pressure on her, making her feel like she's worthless. And he changed his tone. I said, it's God. Listen to God's blessings. Do what you can. So I want to just apply that, the same idea to livelihood. Your husband's working hard. You want to motivate him a little more. Fine. You know what? He's working hard. Maybe he needs a little good, nice meal, a little nurturing, a little support. You can't imagine what can be done when people feel supported. That would be my approach. And I wouldn't allow money to become in between spouses. That's like that's ridiculous. The most important thing is that you two have a good relationship. You have a family to build.
Yeah, well said. Well said. I so appreciate that. I had a guest once tell me regarding, I'm flipping it now to women breadwinners. And we see this nowadays is so very popular, right? Either the woman is the breadwinner, and we see it also in more observant Jewish circles, or she is quickly going to out earn her husband. And I heard once on the show the kind of the warning that if you're in that position, your marriage is doomed to fail because a man has such a delicate ego. And I've had listeners, struggle with that, and I could see why, right? Because they are in that position and they feel that internal struggle with, well, I don't want this to, I love my career, or I love my business, and it is positioned to out earn my husband, or I've already out earned my husband, but I don't want to hurt his ego. What do we tell them?
There are many reasons. Let's talk about the reasons why the husband is not being able to be the breadwinner, and not for whatever reason. If it's due to his laziness, or his just, he's just not going to work, he may need help. He may need some therapy. He may need someone to talk to. Why does he not feel for his own dignity and his own pride? Should be at least earning something. So you have to get to the bottom of it. If he indeed has a real problem, we have to get to the heart of the problem.
Right.
If it's something he's a control over, he needs to talk to someone about it. This is regardless if his wife is making a lot of money. A husband should, the traditional role is that the man should be the breadwinner. So if he is the breadwinner and he's supporting the family, if the wife wants to work, it's up to her, but she doesn't have to. The other way around is correct. If a woman is the main breadwinner, it could end up be very demoralizing for a man. And I would try to speak to him one-on-one and say, what's going on? And for him to say, my wife is making the money, I don't need to do. I said, but forget about money here. What are you doing every day with your life? Don't you want to come home at the end of the day feeling productive?
Right.
You've contributed. Because remember, work isn't just about money. It's also about productivity. It's about feeling that you're contributing something to society.
Right.
So whenever you see a person is not doing that, you always have to try to wonder why. Now, I'll be very honest, even women also need that. So traditionally, our approach is if the man is doing the breadwinning, a woman still should not just sit around and her children go to school and have nothing to do. Right. I've seen many women become very, very demoralized by that and been hurt by that. So I always encourage women, embrace a hobby, maybe create a book club, do something online, find something where you feel accomplished. Everyone needs to feel accomplished, men and women. So for me, it's really more of that sense of accomplishment that needs to be encouraged in the man's case. The woman should obviously not be pushing in his face and throwing in his face and say, hey, look, I'm the breadwinner. He doesn't need to hear that.
Right.
But he knows it on his own. But there is situations where I know women have consulted with me. My husband just doesn't go to work. And, I'm working very hard and he pressures me to do more work. And I really think that man needs help. It's really not healthy at all.
Right.
And it could, even if the woman is a tzaddikus, completely righteous and is selfless and is willing to forego her own hard work, but still, it's, what kind of respect? You come Friday night, Shabbos, for the children, the husband's doing what, Now, it's one thing if he's learning Torah all day and he's teaching and he's really passionate about that and he's not making so much money. But if he's just sitting around, that's not healthy for anybody.
Right. Thank you. And that actually segues us into a topic that I happen to love. One of my favorite Hayom Yoms, one of my favorite aphorisms of the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe, penned by the Rebbe, is, I think it's the 25th of Nisan, I want to say, but it's where the Frierdiker Rebbe talks about the fact that if we've been given a talent for polishing pearls and we're baking bread instead, we are making a mistake, because even though baking bread is very important for the world, suggesting that, we've been given that talent for pearls and we're not utilizing it. And the reason I bring it up is because very often we see that we have a hard time choosing a means for a livelihood, right? In terms of, and we do this to our children too, as parents. We kind of project our fears and we kind of steer our kids away. We tend to steer our kids away from what their natural inclinations are. Perhaps it was done to us, and we find ourselves kind of trapped in a career path or in a means of livelihood that has nothing to do with where our talents and capabilities are. And it leads people to a lot of frustration. Like you mentioned before, it's not just about the money, right? It's about being productive and contributing in a certain way that's so unique. Can you help us here with giving us that clarity? So when it comes to choosing a livelihood through that process, because either we've experienced it as adults or are experiencing, or we're going to raise children, and we kind of need to go back to the proper Torah perspective on this.
Yeah. I remember my son came home from school when he was a little boy, and he was very excited. And he told me he heard today, you were born an original, don't become a copy.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember years later, till this day, Hashem, God created each of us unique. Even if you're the child of your parents and you have their genes, that doesn't mean you're a clone or a carbon copy. And for healthy parents, the goal is healthy parents will help cultivate the uniqueness of their child. Unfortunately, many parents project their expectations, their needs, their demands on their children and say, no, you have to be what I think you should be,
right,
or you have to be like I am. That's never a healthy thing. You need the child to be who they are.
mm-hmm.
And the problem is we live in an insecure world where many adults are projecting upon us their expectations, their demands, and then we become pleasers. We feel the pressure that we need to satisfy them.
Mm-hmm.
And you end up not singing your own song, you end up singing their song or no song or someone else's song.
Mm-hmm.
So Torah is there to really help cultivate a sense of self-confidence plus support, that I will support you for who you are, not for who I want you to be. And I think it's a critical lesson that educators and parents need to learn to help cultivate the uniqueness of your child.
Mm-hmm.
Educate your child according to his or her way. Obviously, you want to share with them your values, your ideals, your ethics, your standards. But that too has to be, if one child is let's say, very musical, another
Right.
child is very strategic, very cerebral. It would be a big mistake to try to fit one person into another person's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the healthy parents need to do. And they need to step back and recognize that.
Right. And not that fear of, well, how are you going to make money at that? Right. Like we often hear that. We often heard it as children.
That's another one. Yeah. You want to educate your children to have this self-confidence to do what they believe in, and they will then make their money. Not to say, only if you do this, you'll make money.
Right.
There are a lot of people, follow your dreams, obviously help support and so on. And sometimes people have to learn they have to learn in the job. It's trial and error. You don't always, you can't always figure it out.
Yeah, it's total trial and error. And like you said, you can follow your talent and your inclination, but that's not to say that you also will find business advisors and mentors and, and the lawyer and the accountant to help you through that. That's why God created a whole system within nature. Speaking of which, we talked about engaging with, these things in the natural world. Very often I hear it differently, not regarding business, but regarding practical financial matters. Like, well, do I really have to open that account, or do I really have to balance, my budget? And do I really, why do I have to be so involved? And I often say, well, it is part of the effort, right? It's part of the natural means. It's not saying that you're leaving God out of the picture. If God gave us bank accounts and investment accounts, they're there for a reason. It's not to say that that's going to give you the money, but it's just you're doing what you need to do. How should we view financial management?
Another great question. I think you used the verse well before you said, God blesses all those that in the things you do. In other words, you need to make the right containers. So there's no question a person's, let's say, running a business, they should have good accounting practices, keep the books, analyze it well, have people help analyze them.
Mm-hmm.
Where you need to draw the line is not to become to the point where you agonize 24/7 over your bottom line.
Right.
Now, when it comes Shabbos, for example, Friday night, just say to yourself, I did what I had to do 6 days of the week. Now I rely on Hashem. I'll get back to work Monday morning or whenever you get back to work. You need to have boundaries in our lives. And this is true with everything. You see very successful business people They know how to go on vacation too. What they do is they make their plans, they do what they have to do, and then they plan. They say, okay, after this month, we're going to go away for a week.
Mm-hmm.
And that does not compromise their business. It's part of a balanced process. So I think it's critical to prioritize when it comes to money management, as like time management. It's not doing everything all the time. It's really prioritizing and figuring out, okay, I've done what I had to do. Now my children need me. That's not compromising your business. It's part of the healthy balance. And when one place things are in control, it will help other places. Many people, their businesses may be successful, but at home it's a mess. And ultimately it's going to spill over. You think their work won't be affected by it? So I think it's a matter of a combination of using best business practices, following guidelines, but also knowing where your heart and soul is. Like sometimes the word expression is, keep your feet firmly planted on the ground, but your head should be in the clouds.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I love that. That's how Jews should behave. I love that. Rabbi, you were one of the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Chosrim, a group of students who memorized the Rebbe's lengthy talks during Shabbat and holidays, and hours of complex Torah study, and you helped transcribe those. You're intimately familiar with the Rebbe's perspective, and you're well-versed in his Torah and his teachings. Can you share what were some of the Rebbe's perspectives on wealth and abundance, and were they perhaps unconventional, somewhat radical in the Torah world at the time?
Okay, very good. Actually, in my book, Torah Meaning for Life, I have a chapter called Wealth and Charity that addresses this very directly. So I'll share a few thoughts, and maybe they are a little radical. There's a famous medrash the Rebbe quotes often, where King David asks, medrash is an oral interpretation of the Torah, where King David asks God, why did you create social classes of the super wealthy, the wealthy, upper class, middle class, lower class? Why not you have enough gold and silver, you could have distributed it equally, so there wouldn't have to be wealth and poverty. Let everybody share equally, like somewhat of a socialistic system.
Right.
Socialist system, I should say. Socialistic, I said, socialist system. Okay. And God responds, listen to this. He says, because who would do chesed in the world? There'd be no kindness. If everybody had equal, there would never be any acts of kindness. This way, I've created a situation where those that have more have the opportunity to give. You know what that means? That means that wealth was not a product of people's ingenuity. It's God saying, I want to give some people more so they'd be wise enough, because I trust them that they'll be wise enough to share it with another. So when a person is blessed with abundance, you have to look at it like this. Yes, I did my part to get that abundance, but God gave it to me and not to someone else because he trusted me. He trusted that I would be wise enough and sensitive enough to realize that I have extra in order to share that. This is a fundamental cornerstone of the Rebbe's approach based on that medrash and based on Hasidic teachings, which I would say is somewhat radical. There's I don't know if you ever, Andrew Carnegie wrote an essay called The Gospel of Wealth. This became like the Bible of Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and others, because he wrote about the concept, not from a religious point of view. He says, when God has blessed you with so much wealth, more than you can spend, what's your responsibility? So he says, I don't believe in others imposing upon you like the socialist system. You have to impose upon yourself to give it back to those that gave it to you, and that's the public. So he was a big believer. He founded, Carnegie did, the public library system, because he thought empowering people with knowledge who couldn't go to school would help them build up their lives. So he was a big advocate on self-imposed charity as the way you repay for the gifts of wealth, which is very aligned with the Torah thinking. And it's really a very powerful way to express the idea. It basically is saying, your wealth is yours, you are blessed with it, but you're also blessed to be wise enough that it's not just yours. God is saying, I trusted you because you now have opportunities that other people don't have. And the truth is, by the way, you can apply the same thing to someone who's blessed with more intelligence, someone who's blessed with other gifts. They were given to you in order to share, not just for you to indulge in them. That's a very central point in the Rebbe's teachings about wealth.
Beautiful. And I would love for you to expound a little bit on this example that you gave us with Carnegie and the charity, because I find that sometimes it is beautiful that it is also a secular concept, but we can get tripped over a little bit because we can fall into the trap of saying, well, today I have and therefore I give, but now there's a recession or there's a crisis or we lost our job or whatever. How can we give? And I always say that we really flip that entire giving paradigm on its head, whereas the secular world says you give after everything's taken care of because you're a kind, charitable person, right? You want to contribute to society. And Judaism tells us, no, it's not at the end. It's something that happens first. We give first. Can you elaborate a little bit on that for people to have that clarity, perhaps?
Absolutely. There's a Jewish law that says that even a poor person is obligated to give charity. Why? Because it's not just about the amount, even if it's a penny. Right. It's that you have something to give. It's right. The dignity of giving. So when you think of it that way, it's really about the essence of life. Those that say, when I make enough, then I'll give. Right. Basically, it means that your life is centered around you, and you'll be benevolent enough to share with others. The Jewish perspective is, no, you were sent to this world to be a giver, period. No matter what you have. And you'll see people who say, when I'll make $1 million, then I'll give charity. Well, I don't know how much they give. I see people who are givers, even when they have $1, they give. Right. Even when they have $1,000. It's not about the amount. It's a state of mind. It's understanding I was blessed with life. Right. I was given life, and therefore I have to give. And it's not about the dollar amount. Right. And I think that is one of the key differences, that Judaism believes that we are sent here on a mission from above, and show gratitude, honor the mission that you were sent. Your life is not a given. Don't take your life for granted. It's not a sense of entitlement. And as you said before, that's why we give from right in the beginning, in the morning. Moda'ani, thank you for returning my soul to me. We give of the first fruit. Yeah. You don't wait till the end. You give from the first, because you're showing that the first thing I recognize is that my whole life is a gift. And I have to recognize that all the time and show gratitude for that. Right. Now, obviously, if you're blessed with more, you'll give more. But $1 given by a person who has to struggle to give $1 can be worth a lot more than $1,000 by given by someone. For them, it's nothing. Right. You just reminded me of an interview that I once read. A Jewish philanthropist was asked, I don't know how many millions he gave. Let's just come up with 1 million, whatever it was. And the journalist asked them, like, how did you come to give such an amount? And his answer was so great. He said, well, actually, it's not about the amount that I gave. The real question is, the real truth of the matter is that you don't come to give $1 million unless you don't give $1 when you had 10, and 10 when you had 100 and 1,000. You don't get to be that kind of giver if you haven't been giving always. Now, Rabbi, I would love to wrap it up with what I call Jewish Money Matters fill in the blanks. And this is a part of the show where I'll give you an open-ended statement, and you'll finish it with the first thing that comes to mind. And these are more personal questions. You ready? Go for it. I love it. All right. We were talking about giving. The first one is, when I give Meiser or Tzedakah, I like to give to those that are most in need. Yeah. I'd like to make more money because I should be able to change the world. Ah, beautiful. Right. We can do so much with it. Beautiful. Something I wish perhaps I'd learn about money growing up is it could either destroy you or make you the greatest person. Nice. Money, spiritual or physical? Spiritual and physical body. Nice. Something I splurge on unapologetically is my family. I love that. Oh, I love that. That's so nice. Rabbi, spender or saver? The truth is, I'm both, honestly. I know It's strange. I'm a spender, and I always spend on good things, but in my mind, I always feel, hey, sometimes you got to put away. So I'm always having a conflict. That's
Good.
the answer.
That's good. That's very good. Today, I'm most grateful for
The life that God gave me and the blessings to be able to help others.
Baruch Hashem, beautifully. And finally, I'm Rabbi Simon Jacobson. I believe Jewish money matters because
With it, we transform the material into the spiritual.
Rabbi, so enlightening, so wonderful. Thank you so much. Tell listeners where we can find you, where we can connect with you.
Absolutely. So firstly, thank you for the honor sharing with you. Great questions, great conversation.
Thank you.
So my website, meaningfullife.com, name of my book, Toward a Meaningful Life, meaningfullife.com. There you can subscribe. You can see a wide array of different materials of things we do, weekly programs, online, in person, writings. You got it, meaningfullife.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We will be sure to put that in the notes and we'll be sure to follow. Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Thank you. It was beautiful.